Greetings, it is I, Tentus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my expose on the various anime series, reviewing them, and describing to you some suggestions on how to use them in your BESM games. Today I've got two from a 2014, actually, we've moved into. Blood Blockade Battlefront and Denpa Kyoushi. On the other hand, from this season, I have another two that I want to introduce you to. Trickster and Izetta the Last Witch. But let's talk about the ones from 2014 with Blood Blockade Battlefront, or Kekkai Sensen. So this takes place in this city of Hellsalem's Lot, a place that was formerly known as New York City, where we're focusing on this organization called Libra, who's effectively the defenders and controllers in amongst the city. So what had happened was this gate to the beyond opened in New York City, flooding it with monsters and magics. It's Libra's job to make sure that this stuff that has come into our world in this city stays in the city, that it doesn't spread out to the rest of the world, and keeps it maintained and contained in this area where this kind of gateway to the beyond exists in. We focus on Leonardo Watch, this kind of photographer who is granted the all-seeing eyes of God. It's this ability that he has, and he moves to the city, and then he actually gets recruited into Libra and helps them out with some of their cases. And that's where we focus on him joining their team. So of course, if we want to talk about the genres, it's an action. They get into battles with various supernatural creatures and enemies and various threats that are to the very city and of course to moving out into the world. It's a supernatural. We deal with supernatural powers, monsters, magic, and the sort of like. And it's an urban fantasy. It's a fantasy sort of series set in a city. So it's a city-based fantasy series that's actually kind of an interesting take on the entire genre. Now, I would rate this one a 4. It was very entertaining, and I liked it a lot, and I would recommend it. Now, if you're using this in a BESM game, I'd recommend 500 points. Your characters are beginning pretty powerful. You're going to, of course, be members of Libra, dealing with a lot of the problems that are going on in Hellsalem's Lot. Dealing with various threats which might be threatening to open up the city to various attacks or spread the kind of influence of the beyond to other parts of the world, which you're trying to prevent. While dealing with a lot of these cases in their own specialized ways, the team of players will kind of be moving in there, dealing with the other members of Libra as NPCs, and trying to maintain the city as best they can while minimizing the damage to it, though it tends to be a lot of damage and destruction and death associated with any of the cases they tend to get involved with, so that's probably going to be a lot of what's going to be happening with your players too. Now let's talk about Denpa Kyoushi. Denpa Kyoushi focuses on Junichiro, who is a kind of genius who graduated from high school at a young age, but he's an otaku. He doesn't want to do anything with his life, he just wants to stay home, he's very shut in. His sister, Suzune, kind of gets really angry with him and forces him out into the work world, and it actually forces him to become a substitute physics teacher at his old alumni high school where he graduated from. So he actually then proves himself to be an incredibly capable teacher and actually uses a lot of his knowledge as an otaku to help out various students and the problems they have, helping them out both in schoolwork and in their personal lives, improving them, kind of bonding with the classroom as he goes along. So this is really a comedy series. He's an otaku through and through, and he does a lot of very silly ways of going about his things that are very otaku-based, and it can be very comical. It is a little bit of a romance. He kind of gets, like, that he's really a good person and does the right thing for a lot of times, and there is little romantic connotations in amongst certain of the characters that makes it that way. Then I would also call it a school anime. It's all based around this school, where Junichiro goes there, he's teaching, he's dealing with the fact that there's all these students, and we focus a little bit on each of the students' lives as he's helping them out. Now this is another one I rate a 4. It was really good in the season, and I do recommend checking it out. Now if you're using this in a BESM game, I recommend 130 points. Make them students in Junichiro's class. They're going to be students that he perhaps has helped out previously with a lot of their major problems, so they've reached a better point in time, and he's recruiting them to help him out with the various problems of the other students. And so you'll have these kind of episodic content where there's other students within the class that your team of players are helping out Junichiro to deal with and helping out overcome their own problems, while perhaps still dealing with some of the problems that their characters had to begin with, just a little bit on the side. So let's move on talking about the ones from this season. Let's talk about Trickster. Now, Trickster is set in the year 2030X, so it's sometime in the 2030s, and we focus on the boys' detective clubs founded by Kegoro, this mysterious and eccentric detective who's in charge of them. We then sort of focus around the various cases, large and small, that this group does. It does focus a little bit more around this one energetic member named Keisuke, who meets with this boy with strange powers and almost immortality, who always wants to have himself die and get himself killed, named Yoshiro. So eventually Yoshiro gets recruited by him into the boys' detective club and joins with their kind of adventures that they go on, as then they begin to really deal with this criminal known as the Fiend with 20 Faces, who has this history of Kegoro, the founder of the group, and the entire relationship between the two of them driving the entire storyline of what's going on with the detectives as they go forward. Now, of course, this is a detective anime. They're a group of detectives that work together to solve cases. It's also a mystery. There are mysteries that exist and have to be solved, different things going on, trickery, the various things that deal with a lot of times detectives are going to solve. But it's also supernatural. Yoshiro's immortal and seemingly is hard to kill, if impossible to kill, and has these kind of defensive powers around him that cause destruction and death oftentimes accidentally that he really doesn't intend to, but it's protecting him from danger. Now, if you're using this in a BESM game, I recommend 200 points. You're going to make your people a team of people within the Detectives Club. So you're making a team of people within the Detectives Club, and they're going to go on various cases, large and small. You can have them deal with things with 20 faces if you really want to, or have them deal with their own sort of mysteries that are going on out there. They could even deal with Yoshiro and his immortality if you really want to dive into that storyline from the anime, but it's up to you how much of the actual storylines from the anime, 20 Faces and Yoshiro, you want to dive directly into, or if you want to come up with your own sort of ideals and detective stories for your characters to do, but your elite detectives that are going on these cases, that are going to be members of this club, and of course you could use the other ones as NPCs that they're going to connect with, and of course Kegoro as the founder and kind of controller of it that you're oftentimes going to be reporting back to. So let's move on and finish up with Izetta, the Last Witch. This series is set in an alternate history Earth at the cusp of World War II, where we focus on Izetta, the last of a clan of witches, which has this kind of telepathic control where they can touch items and manipulate them and control them. She meets with her childhood friend, Princess Fine of the country of Elistat, and decides to devote herself to using her powers to protect Elistat from this invading country that's attempting to conquer, effectively, the world, Germania. So she's joined with the princess in defending the country of Elistat from this threat. Now, the genres for this one are, of course, alternate history. It's set in an alternate world with different countries. They're in an alpine country of Elistat, which doesn't actually exist in the real world. There's Germania, which is this sort of cross between the World War I Germany and World War II Germany. It's a war anime. Wars and battles are going on. It's all about these kind of world war beginning and starting up. And it's a historical fantasy, I would call it. It's set in this historical setting with fantasy powers. She's the last witch and has witch powers bringing in here. Now, I rate this one a 5. It is one of my favorites from the season. I do have a couple of favorites, of course, but I did enjoy it quite a lot for its storyline and the abilities and stuff that happened in the course of it. Now, if you're using this in a BESM game, I recommend 350 points. You're going to have a team of characters which will be the last witches. They're effectively replacing Izetta as a group of characters taking the same place of it, dealing with the Germanian invasion of Elistat. So they're going to be going into these battles using their powers to fight against the enemy forces, kind of leading the battle charge in the various battles and in skirmishes taking place in the course of this war, all while trying to protect Elistat, protect the princess, which all of them will have a connection to. You could have it built something similar to with what happened to Izetta, but maybe they're a family of witches, or from the last remembrance of this clan that she protected, rather than just an individual that sort of gave this bond to them, but also possibly dealing with trying to have these espionage acts of traveling to these various other places and recruit other countries to the cause of continuing the war against Germania, so that this one country, this tiny country on its own, even backed by witches, is not losing out and needs that help. So it's like, you're there, but you're not going to lead victory on your own. You're going to need some help. It's a massive country in comparison to a very tiny one. You're only doing so much on your own. So that's it for today. I introduced you to 4 more anime series over the past couple of years, and I told you a little bit about what happened in them to review them and let you know about watching them, and I explained to you about some suggestions using them in your BESM game if you want to enjoy playing in these universes. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.